All right, here with John R. Miller. Really excited. John, love your music. I've been listening to it a lot lately. July 16th, Depreciated, the new album comes out. We'll get to that. But for the fans that maybe are just learning about you, maybe listening to this and haven't heard your music as much, what's kind of the backstory? Because we definitely have some questions about your journey, which is really interesting. But how would you kind of explain your journey from starting to play music to where you are today in Nashville and making some really awesome country music?
Thanks for saying so, first off, and thanks for having me.
Yep.
But yeah, I kind of started playing guitar when I was about 14. Kind of trying to start garage bands with friends of mine when I was a teenager, and kind of got more into like songwriters and songwriting when I was about 18 or 19, and someone showed me John Prine for the first time, and sort of I think like anybody hears John Prine for the first time, it sort of kind of opened my whole world right up, and this sounded like a magic trick. um, but I started playing with a string band, and writing songs for that around that time, and we did a lot of fiddle tunes, old time music and stuff like that, and kind of played some original songs, and we kind of did some touring and some traveling, and we kind of, when we weren't able to get gigs starting off, we just kind of go out to DC or New York or wherever to try to busk and earn a living that way. But we ended up doing a lot of traveling with that band, and I got to meet a lot of people just traveling around doing that for a number of years. And after that, I kind of was in and out of a whole bunch of bands. I played bass for a lot of people, just kind of trying to keep traveling and keep learning. And yeah, I just loved traveling and playing music. So I just about play with anybody who'd have me, and eventually moved down here when is probably about a little over 4 years ago now, from West Virginia, which is I don't know if I said this, where I grew up. Um, and I was playing with my girlfriend's band, Locust Honey, at the time, Chloe, and she plays fiddle with my band now. I was playing bass with them, and toured a whole bunch with them, and then kind of just really gradually started playing under my own name, and just continuing to write songs. I kind of started writing songs and playing shows under my own name, kind of as a fail safe, because it seemed like every band that I'd been in, fizzled out after a while. So I don't know if I ran out of band names or something, but uh, just decided to give it a try.
Oh, it's a hell of a journey. I always appreciate you mentioned busking. Were you doing that in New York City, you said, or just
Yeah, we'd mostly go out to DC.
DC?
I mean, this was like when I was like maybe 21, 22, and that band that I played with, it was kind of when we were first starting out, and we try to get local gigs and stuff like that. But we didn't really have any solid way of making a living back then, and we just drive out to the metro stops in DC about 3 times a week, and we play for a few hours outside of the metro stops and make a little bit of money and go buy a case of beer and go back home, and that's kind of how we made rent for a while. And then we did travel up to New York, and played in the subways a bunch up there, and down to Knoxville and played Market Square. And kind of from there, that was kind of how we started to just meet people and kind of get our bearings as far as playing and traveling goes.
Yeah, I saw that you were from the Eastern Panhandle of West Virginia. So I
Mhm.
like pulled up the map just to like look at that, and I'm like, that's like an hour from Washington, D.C. Like, just in my mind, it seems so far away. And then you got Maryland like sneaking over there. It's like such a weird geographical.
It's a strange little area. Yeah, it's right Maryland and Virginia, and yeah, it's about an hour and a half from DC and from Baltimore, and maybe a half an hour south of Pennsylvania too. So it's I kind of grew up just off of 81 there in Martinsburg, Hedgesville area, and yeah, we used to go out to DC and Baltimore for shows when I was a kid a whole lot, and always go out to see bands over there because that's the kind of the closest place that bands would come to us.
When you talked about one of your press materials that we were given, a tidbit about, you were talking about where you grew up, and I don't think you meant it literally, maybe you did, but you called that area kind of haunted, kind of stuck, like it's stuck, and it's like you go there, you're going back in time. Do you appreciate that now a little more, or was it kind of one of those places where you were like, I got to get the hell out of here? I came from a place where I wanted to get the hell out of there in Indiana, but it was more because it was like, it wasn't the quintessential small town. It was the medium-sized shitty town with a lot of like riff-raff, no pun intended here, but like the type of people I went to school with, it just wasn't my thing. But we were kind of close to Chicago, similarly how you were close to like other big cities. Do you look back and kind of have an appreciation, or is it kind of like, eh?
And I do, and it's it's a strange little place. It's probably pretty like small to medium town USA kind of. It's kind of there's a lot of rural farmland and orchards and stuff, but kind of around the highway, it's just tons of chain restaurants and things like that. And
2 Dairy Queens.
Yeah, I mean,
the Taco Bell KFC combo.
By the time I had become an adult, I mean, the downtown was it was kind of a ghost town, and it's it's really close to when I said it was kind of like it was haunted, like there's just so many old structures and things there that have been there for a century and a half that are still standing in some state or another.
Right.
And it's also really close to Harper's Ferry and Gettysburg and Antietam, and a whole lot of really pretty heavy spots in the Civil War, and there's a lot of history there. That's kind of, it feels like a pretty heavy place sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are spots there that do feel like kind of trapped in time, like they've just been the same for as long as I can remember.
Is it one of those places like Steve was kind of mentioning where you're like a lot of people try and escape in a sense, or is it more of like a romanticized, like, oh, you plant roots here and you stay here for generations?
Man, it would be kind of a hard place to romanticize, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's I kind of, I mean, I still have friends there, and I have love for it in a certain way, but I also, I kind of started traveling. I wanted to play music because I loved music, but I also wanted to travel so that I could kind of, get out of it. I don't know. I always was kind of trying to see. I knew that there was other stuff out there, and it's a pretty, I don't know. There's a lot of pretty wonderful people there, and there's a lot of pretty narrow-minded people there too. It's one of those kind of spots.
What speaking of traveling, I love traveling, and obviously COVID kind of made that whole thing not fun for a lot of people, and everybody was kind of musicians. You're not able to go out there and kind of do the thing you guys love doing most. But picking back up, traveling wise, whether it's something recent or something that you've done, do you have a favorite place you've ever been? Because you mentioned being kind of like a road warrior, wanting to get out there and travel and play music. Do you have a place that kind of stole your heart, so to speak, over the years?
Oh man, I mean a bunch. I feel like like once you get out to a certain point, like out west, I just kind of love it everywhere I go. You know, it feels so freeing to be out in all that space, because really, like, there's a lot of congestion and not much space to move around in the east, you know.
Yeah.
But kind of once you get past a certain point, and I feel like out it's sort of like once you get out in Colorado and beyond, it's just so beautiful.
You
And
hear that, Wes?
I knew that was coming.
Real quick, Wes is in Chicago. I'm in Colorado. I moved out here in December.
Mhm.
And it's just, everybody here is like, the only thing, like the corny dad joke is like, the only thing you're going to wish is you did it sooner. Like, haha, see you later. Like, it was because kind of people wave when they meet. It's so true though, man. Like, just went to Breckenridge and Frisco and Evergreen and kind of like exploring all the areas now. And it's just, it's different. Like you feel it. It's hard to, like, I felt that when I went to Iceland once. You feel like, you feel it. You're like, this is different. And then until you kind of like live somewhere like that, it's hard to kind of put your, you know, because we lived in Chicago for so long, Wes and I, and it's concrete jungle is the term, you know, it's tough. Like it's hard to find inspiration or creativity, even whether you're a songwriter or what we do or whoever. So yeah, I mean, I definitely I had to kind of throw that in there for Wes. Trying to get him out here. So
I'm coming in a couple weeks.
Yeah, that's true.
I love it out there. Chloe and I did our big trip last year. We went out to Colorado last August, and her dad lives in Denver, and we kind of stayed there and for a few days and went hiking in a bunch of places. Like there was I forget the mountain now, but you know, there's a million of them out there. But we like went camping north of Steamboat Springs and did some really good hiking out there. And that was kind of our escape the house trip last year when we were kind of just at home the whole year. So that was where we wanted to go when we were making a trip. So if that says anything to you.
It does.
West Virginia's mountainous too, you know, so it's kind of like it feels a little bit like home maybe, but also in a much wider, freer kind of spot.
Yeah, man. West Virginia is I mean, beyond it being home to me, like it really is like so beautiful and just wild. You know, there's a lot of good opportunities for hiking and rafting and all sorts of stuff in West Virginia, and I love getting back there whenever I can too. I'm about due. I haven't seen a lot of people up there in a while. Been sort of sequestered down here.
Right.
Feels like.
I wanted to ask you about something kind of a little more personal that you kind of mentioned too in some of your quotes was when you were kind of really working your ass off and traveling. I think the phrase was waking up with a glass of vodka in your hand, or so. Was that more of a, because I think you were having a beer, like not so much of like was that like the stress got so high that it was like a self-medicating mechanism of like, I'm just doing this to kind of get back to the base level of delete this stress from my life right now. And then you kind of found your way when you moved to Nashville, or kind of how was that process for you that where that kind of came about?
Man, it's kind of hard to, it's hard for me to pinpoint exactly now. You know, I definitely kind of let sort of the good times get the best of me for a while. I spent like the entirety of my 20s. I feel like I was in and out and traveling so much, and I kind of, you know, I never really had a super stable place that I was living. And, you know, if I could make rent, you know, I was pretty lucky a lot of the time. But I think part of it was that I never really succeeded at the soft landing when I came home, you know. So I'd be out and, you know, on the road for a few weeks, and that's where I felt most comfortable. Like I've felt more at home traveling than even where I lived for many years a lot of the time. So when I came home, that's kind of when like people, you probably should be like getting your rest and, you know, taking it easy, but I just go home and start and immediately just start hanging out at the bar every night. And I think part of that was just that, like, I kind of just wanted to, I needed some other kind of outlet, and I needed to kind of be in a different place. Because I lived in Shepherdstown for about 10 years, and I love it there. It's just a really small river town. There's like 2 or 3 bars, and
I looked it up.
yeah, it's, you know, there's only so much to that I really found myself willing and able to do there, aside from, you know, working an occasional restaurant job and just drinking every night. So eventually that just kind of got the best of me, and I kind of had to make the decision, like, if I'm gonna stay here, like, I'm probably just going to keep doing this, just sort of stuck in a cycle, you know. So I just made the decision that it was time to go. And a bunch of my friends had moved down here over the years, and I just sort of, it was the next place where I knew the most couches to sleep on. So came down here and it's been making the best of it ever since.
Yeah, I feel like for me it was the opposite. Like when I land in Nashville, I'm like already trashed, and then I just spend the whole time there drunk. Like we don't get anything done. We'll go to Nashville for like work stuff here and there, and it's like we just drink the whole time. And then
it's hard. It's like everybody
I'm like, how do people get shit done here? You know?
And the first I mean, I was in and out for a number of years. I came down here and stayed with people and hung out for, you know, a week at a time for, you know, several years before I actually made the switch. And it was kind of like that, you know, I'd come down here and I just go out to the bars, and then sometimes I'd sleep in my car afterwards because I couldn't drive anywhere, you know. And you know, it's kind of getting to know the town and getting to know more people that way. But once I actually like got a room here and started kind of working more regularly, I just kind of, I quit for about a year and a half. I like went pretty stone sober, at least as far as booze goes, you know. And that really helped me kind of hit the reset button and kind of get things on track to start working on music and doing this now. So
yeah, well, it's paid dividends. And do you have like a favorite spot in Nashville now? Some time later, you've been there for a while. You said now a handful of years almost. Do you have a favorite go-to spot, or would you rather not say to not give it? You don't want tourists going there.
Oh well, I mean, I feel like that's just
inevitable. Yeah.
You go to Jason Aldean's bar a lot?
Jason Aldean has a bar.
Oh,
all those guys have a bar, man. I feel
Broadway
like that's like a rite of passage for like pop country singers, right? You got to own a bar on Broadway or something.
At least Miranda just opened one. I don't know if it's on. Is it on Broadway?
Yeah,
it's on. But I mean,
yeah, I don't go downtown a whole lot, if I'm being honest. I live up in Madison. We live really close to Dee's, which is a great little bar here in Madison. They've started having some really cool music on a regular basis there. And I've always liked the Basement and the Basement East and the 5 Spot. And seems like when I'm going out just to hang out these days, I got a lot of love for Dino's. That's a long time wonderful burger and beer spot. That's to say nothing of all of the, hole in the wall.
Right. When we mentioned the Broadway folks, and a lot of them have opened places down there, and it's usually the names you would expect, obviously, but those names are also, not surprisingly, the names that get on mainstream country radio that are getting played the most. The songs that are on every 3 songs is the same song. I'm gonna go on a limb here and say you're not listening to much mainstream country radio, but Cody Johnson is an example of a guy who we had on the podcast recently. Obviously, a lot of fans in Texas and stuff, and his song "Dear Rodeo" with Reba, he said it was deemed too rodeo for radio, so like it just kind of like flopped or whatever. do you pay attention at all to what's kind of going on that like level of the spectrum of country music, kind of the mainstream side of things? Because it's frustrating as fans. It's like if you get in a car, you can't really, like if you just have your regular stations, it's like you're gonna hear the same 3 songs every hour pretty much. Just kind of, you know the business better than most people will, but do you kind of pay attention at all, or is that kind of just like I'd rather not?
Man, I never really have. I, kind of in the early mid 2000s when we started traveling a lot, we'd listen to country radio sometimes, and they were still playing some stuff that I really enjoyed and everything, but I've never really actively paid too much attention to stuff that's kind of getting played on the radio and whatnot. I don't know. I just I've always kind of just wanted to put on something that I knew, or something that a friend had told me about, or that's kind of how I learn about music, is through just word of mouth and other people. And
Sure.
Used to be when I was a kid, I just look at the liner notes of the bands I was listening to, and that's how I found out about other bands.
Yeah.
Every punk record always had like a laundry list of bands that they played with, and that's so I'd like go through the liner notes and then start searching out for those other bands.
Yeah, you mentioned kind of the garage band start that you kind of had. Do you feel like that's kind of like a lost? I feel like when I was a kid, and you kind of mentioned this in your some of the press release things that we got out of this, but recording songs from the radio onto a cassette tape, like kids these days, I don't know who's listening to this podcast and what their age necessarily is, but they're like, I've never even heard of that. What's a cassette tape?
Yeah.
Running over right after the commercial, you got to hit record.
Like, oh yeah, man. And like, so if I back then, if I wanted to make like a mix, you'd have to like you have to have 2 stereos, because I didn't have like a nice like hi-fi setup or anything. Like we just had like little boom boxes.
Yeah, the little like Magnavox kind of.
Yeah, like place them facing each other, and then play on one and then record through the little built-in microphone on the other one.
Shit quality.
Yeah, I took what I could get back
Character.
then. I mean, it is what it is. But
I can remember like changing a tire with my dad or something, but I was looking for a song back in the day,
right?
And I hear it and I just drop what I'm doing. I just sprint over, try to get the record. It's like, it's so true. Like we're not old. None of us are old. And it's just like, this is so confusing. If you talk to a 20-year-old, they're just gonna be like, what? I have no record. I mean, even what was it, like LimeWire and stuff, that when that started, was like, oh, here we go. Now we're cooking.
Yeah,
like
the future is here.
I think Napster started in like 98 or 99 or something. And that was like the big like, I don't know, disruptive start of the whole thing, and since then, I mean, it's just been over 20 years. I feel like 20 years is enough for like 3 or 4 different major disruptions in, technology and the way that people consume music these days. 20 years, 50 years ago, that wouldn't have been the case, but now it's like,
who knows?
It just happens so fast. It makes you feel like you're a lot older than you are, because it's like, oh, I remember that, and I remember that thing before that, and that before that, but
right. What's next? What are they going to do now? Elon Musk is going to have some chip in our heads.
Just a chip in your brain, and it plays music for you.
As you think of the song, it just starts playing in your head. I don't think. Yeah. I mean, that's not that. I mean, that's like what? Like, I don't know.
That seems like very doable. I mean,
right. Well, he's doing press conference. Like, didn't he have like a pig with the neuro chip, and he was just like,
this pig is dreaming right now.
So I don't know. It's scary. Like, but at its core, like a guy like yourself, when you listen to your music, it just harkens back to just like good music. It's obviously country, or you have influences from a lot of different places, but it's something that we kind of just gravitate to more and more as we've gotten older a little bit, and kind of gotten so frustrated with the radio. It's something we don't listen to much anymore. But a guy that sung your praises, who's obviously one of the best out there and generational talent, is Tyler Childers. And he had a great quote about you, calling you a wordsmith based on your travels and how well you kind of encapsulate everything in your music. And that's got to feel pretty damn good when somebody like that says those type of things about your music.
Yeah, man. Tyler's great. I've known him for quite a few years now, you know, traveling and playing in West Virginia. He was kind of hanging around the same folks in Huntington like 10 years or so ago that some of my bands were, and we got to know each other pretty good back then. It's been really amazing watching his journey, man. It's so, you know, speaking of disruptive,
Right.
things,
Yeah.
it's pretty awesome, and he's been really kind to me too. So I got a lot of love for Tyler.
Was him covering one of your songs, just like, because that was kind of a while ago, but like he covered coming down, I believe, for his Red Barn radio sessions. Was that kind of just like a holy shit moment, or was that a little bit more like, he wasn't quite the established star that he is now, so were you a little bit like, oh, that's cool?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's the highest. I mean, that's the highest form of flattery. You know, when somebody covers your songs, it doesn't really matter who it is. I was honored that he wanted to do it back then. You know, it meant a whole lot to me then, and it means a whole lot to me now.
I saw that you also worked on the Long Violent History record with him. Like, in what capacity were you involved in the project? Because I don't think I was aware of that until I was kind of reading, or I was looking on your Instagram.
Yeah, I got that call. It was last summer, last August, and I played bass on pretty much the whole record. That there was, you know, a band on it, and yeah, we just went up there to Kentucky and holed up for a few days, and just kind of worked on that project from start to finish. And that, like, I'm really I love old time and traditional fiddle music, and that was sort of something that I was pretty familiar with from the outset. So I was really happy to get that call. But yeah, we just holed up at their place and set up, and yeah, it was a hell of a group, man. We had a great time making that. It was really hot. We were all kind of stuffed in a little like upstairs room without air conditioning, and we'd have to wait until between takes to turn the fan on, you know, because we were all just sweating it out while we were playing because it had to be quiet. And then we turned the fan back on whenever we got done a take.
I saw, you guys did some like filming and or maybe it was just photos or like recording in like a cave or something. You like dropped down into, what was that like?
Yeah, there's a sinkhole out there, not far from their place that I guess Tyler had known about it for many years, and he said he wanted to make a record down there. He just wanted to, like, it's like 50 feet underground. Like you have to climb down.
There's ropes involved.
Yeah, ropes and ladders and everything. Like it's pretty deep, and like then you have to kind of walk through these tunnels, and
you're like, I didn't sign up for this.
You come to this like silo chamber at the end of it that just the sound in there is so incredible and reverberant and beautiful. And yeah, he didn't end up making the record down there, but we did go down there afterwards and get some reverb tracks. We got to like listen to the record back that we had just made, like finished making the day before. We went down into the cave and got reverb tracks, and yeah, it was very cold and damp and dark, and it was just us and the crickets, and it was a really good time.
I don't know if I've ever heard something that, if you want to compare it to like what mainstream dudes on country radio and how different it can be, for how legit it can be. Like, oh, this sinkhole 50 feet down, it's got the perfect sound. Let's go down there and
let's get some ropes, and you're like
like that. I mean, that's what it's all about to me. I mean, that's amazing. Are any, you mentioned like the drinking earlier, like, well, you stopped for a while, but you made me think of it with this whole K or the sinkhole thing. Are psychedelics or anything ever involved in any of this? You taking it? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. I was just.
Oh, I was gonna ask about Fire Dancer. I was like, that sounds like a mushroom trip song.
Yeah, actually, that one, Fire Dancer. It's funny that you mentioned that because that was actually sort of written about. I was hanging out like after a festival one time a number of years ago, and kind of drinking and partying and everything, and came across this like traveling group of like fire spinners and fire performers, and they were kind of hanging out at their camp, and invited me and a buddy to sit down, and we kind of passed the bottle around with them, and like they ended up passing me a pipe of I didn't realize at the time because the guy said, you know, would you like some medicine? And I said, sure, you know, I thought it was just weed, you know, and so I hit it a couple times, and then just went out, just fell back into the grass, and it turned out it was DMT, and that was my first experience with that. And I was out for like maybe 5 or 10 minutes, but oh man, it was such a wild experience. And I knew it was like, as soon as I like woke back up, I knew what it was and everything. I was just like, oh my God. I was just like, so that was sort of about that experience. I never knew any of their names, and they never knew anything.
What'd you see? Because I've heard on Rogan, whether it was Sturgill talking about when he first did it, Mike Tyson talked about, everybody kind of has an experience that's so unique to them, but there are some similar threads that kind of run through kind of the if you go in with the right mindset, they say you kind of come out with something. But if you didn't know you were taking it, maybe you just had a trip and you were like, whoa, okay, cool, that's awesome, I saw a lot of colors or something. But
yeah, it was kind of more like that. I didn't really know what was happening, and then I was just kind of felt like I was sort of like, I left my body and was flying through space, and kind of in the in-between, you know. And I never you know, people talk about having interactions with other beings and stuff like that, and if I did, I don't really remember it, but it was I have had moments like that with other psychedelic experiences, but yeah, no, that one was just like a really like wild time. It was kind of I think I was like maybe 25 or 26.
Oh man, that sounds like a good time. Well, the whole you mentioned like growing up that you were brought up to be Catholic, but it was kind of like, didn't sound like it was like super forced on you, right? Like the church element. But well, I was going to ask about the psychedelic. Wes, correct me if I'm wrong, because Wes knows this better than I do. Burning bush theory that like scientists have come out with now, thinking that like Moses was inhaling DMT through the burning bush, and then the whole God vision was like a DMT trip. And it's a pretty fascinating thing that a lot of really smart scientists have kind of come out and said is probably makes sense for that specific story.
Man, there's a lot of that in kind of like looking with what we know now about psychedelics, and you know what they can reveal to a person. Like there's a lot of pretty compelling theories about, you know, all of those experiences that you know, the prophets of old had, where they claim they you know, communed with the divine and things like that. There's a pretty good case to be made for they were probably all you know, if they weren't on some kind of substance, like they were having a psychedelic experience.
Which one would you recommend for somebody who's never dabbled in psychedelics? You sound like you've run the gambit a little bit, whether intentionally or not, with the fire dancers.
Mostly intentionally, but I used to eat a lot of acid. Like that was like a weekly thing for me when I was younger, and I would say start with mushrooms. Mm-hmm. They're pretty easy to come by, especially these days. Like,
I mean, they're legal in certain cities and states now, right?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, make sure you're in a real safe space and you're
Yeah.
comfortable and everything and your head's right. But, I mean, yeah, like start with a few caps and take it from there. That was actually like when I was, kind of getting off booze, for a while, and I was pretty deep. Like I had pretty severe withdrawal symptoms, and like kind of getting past that, I kind of used mushrooms as a way to stay grounded during that period of time, and that kind of um, I don't know, evened me out enough that I really no longer craved booze.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that I was replacing it with mushroom
Right.
trips, every night. It was that kind of helped, I guess, smooth the edges, and give me enough perspective to move past that part of my life.
Yeah, they talk about some crazy. I've heard one of these guys that studies mushrooms, I believe, he was talking about the right trip with the right mindset. You're allergic to cats. You go in, you want to get rid of it. You come out, you're no longer allergic to cats. It's just like your brain is literally rewiring at times.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. And it's kind of sad that it's not more readily available to a lot of people that probably need it.
Yeah.
And a lot of it can kind of be pretty inexpensively sourced, to an extent. But I've just heard so many like incredible stories, whether it's, people really going through, whether it's alcoholism or something else, or something like a really bad allergy to something or whatever it might be, or just you're stuck in a rut of whatever. And I've heard so many great stories about it. And it's kind of nice to hear you kind of echo those sentiments, because you hear a lot on like a big podcast like Rogan, if he has Mike Tyson, or you're like, okay,
Tyson
I can't get this stuff. And it's like, oh yeah, you could probably find a way. There's clinics now that do microdosing, right? And they kind of sit with you to make sure you don't go crazy. And like,
yeah, you can have a full on guided mushroom trip if you know who to talk to. There's a whole network of people that do it, and are well qualified to do it, and it's helped a lot of people, and I hope that sort of continues. It seems like the world's perceptions of that stuff they're kind of changing, and for the better. I think there's tremendous therapeutic value in psychedelics when used appropriately, and they've helped me a lot in my life, and I know a bunch of other people that have too. So
nice.
Would you ever venture into the Amazon for a ayahuasca experience?
Yeah, if I had I
guide.
don't know if I would go as far as the Amazon. I might be able to.
A guy?
I don't know a guy necessarily, but
I might know a guy that knows a guy.
I might not have to get tickets to the Amazon, but yeah, absolutely. I've always wanted to have a proper ayahuasca experience, and that's just never really come up. But I haven't really sought it out too actively. But
when you're songwriting, do you like to have like a drink or a cigarette or a joint or anything to kind of like free up the mind creatively at all?
It kind of depends. When I'm these days, I try to be pretty focused about it. Usually, it used to be kind of more catch as catch can. Just when I'd think of something, maybe I'd write it down and try to work on it when I had time. But this last year, I've tried to get into a better routine with it, and usually just a lot of coffee and a little bit of weed. That's kind of the
It sounds like a great shirt. A lot of coffee, a little weed.
Get you up here and then bring it down a little bit, so you don't have the sweaty palms and the rapid heart rate.
Yeah, that's kind of the ritual for me these days. I can't really focus on writing when I'm drinking. I may I may think of something, but I can't really work anything out that way.
Right. Like we'll take notes of I guess somewhat similarly, but if we think of like a funny tweet idea or a meme or something, and a lot of drinking's involved, you put it in your notes or whatever in your phone, Next day you take a look and you're, what the fuck was I trying to get across with this? like I have zero clue. Like I'll just like do like the herky jerky, like not even the full sentence, just like word, Alan Jackson, wood, board, building a deck. And I'm like, where was I going with that? So yeah, the drinking thing kind of, the confidence level goes up, but
the quality goes down.
Oh man, I have tons of notes like that, you know, more like I'd say probably 80% of the stuff that I write down just gets kind of tossed out, and you know, I'll work on the other 20. But yeah, you just sort of, I think it takes a little bit of time before, and looking back at this thing that you just wrote, with a clear head to know whether it's worth pursuing or not.
Yeah.
Are you a cell phone notes guy, or do you like carry the little pen and paper?
It depends. If my cell phone's all that I have, then, you know, I'll write something down. Sometimes if I'm like kind of trying to just have a day where I'm just trying to be more engaged creatively, I'll leave my phone at home and take a little notepad with me. And, you know, you can't really choose when you think of something. So just kind of whatever's with me at the time.
Just one more question for you, or two more quick ones. Obviously, the new album, Depreciated, out July 16th. I did notice on your Instagram, you're into, it looks like farming and going to the farmer's market. And I'm a big food nerd. Kind of almost went down that path, honestly, and love cooking, love just being out in the wilderness and gardening and all that stuff. Is that a newer hobby for you, or is that a way for you to like kind of disconnect from maybe the touring and the you know, all the stuff that comes with being on the road? And you like cooking, or is it just more like a gardening thing? What's your...
I do like cooking. I like gardening too. I never really, I feel like in years past when I've been traveling a lot, like I'll put a bunch of stuff in the ground, and then, you know, a couple months later I'll look at it and be like, all right, well, I got 2 peppers, and
that didn't work.
But last year I really got to focus on it a lot more, and I just kind of, I've always wanted to be more engaged with that. And I've like gone and worked on a few farms a little bit over the years, and you know, I'm not a farmer by any means. There's a lot of people that are way better and more knowledgeable about that than I am, but I think it's pretty incredibly important to our survival as a species that we kind of change the way that we consume and look at our food sources, and the sustainability of that. I mean, it's well documented. I think it's important to support your local farmers as much as you can.
Absolutely. And it's kind of terrifying for me, being so passionate about it, that you have, when I say kids, I mean, you could probably pull a lot of high schoolers out and they think a steak, it just comes in that.
Yeah.
And it's like, you're kind of like, oh my God, like how have we been programmed, especially when it comes to food and what the shit we're putting into our bodies, where that's not even like thought about it. That was like a living and breathing, and whether it's a vegetable or you know, cow, whatever. I mean, it's super important. I saw a psychic theory, some psychic, and I'm blanking on the name, who supposedly got a bunch of predictions right over the last like 20 years or something. And then they were asking her about aliens, I believe. And she's like, she believes they're going to come right at the fringe of like where we don't know how to like produce enough food anymore, that they're going to come and teach us how to grow food a different way. Like that was her theory. And I was like, that actually makes sense. If you just like separate what's going on right now, the alien stuff, the Pentagon's releasing, the food element of, oh man, like, how are we going to kind of keep up with certain areas?
Sustainability,
yeah. It's like,
they better hurry up, man.
Yeah, right.
It's soon, man.
Maybe we take some mushrooms. We're gonna we can go chat with them or something. But
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that's the alien, the trip. Like that's the, you don't know.
I mean, I think everybody, if I could say one thing about that, I think everybody should read more Wendell Berry's writings and his essays. He's a farmer out in Kentucky that's been writing, with pen and paper since like the 60s. He's been kind of sounding the alarm on the erosion of topsoil and like the disappearance of our connection to our environment and where our food comes from and everything. And it's really, really great writings. I think he's kind of perennially important person to read. And so
Great suggestion.
if anybody's interested in that kind of stuff, Wendell Berry, there's a collection that is kind of, I think, in print right now called The World Ending Fire. And it's an incredible collection of stuff from basically his whole writing career up to present. It's worth reading that stuff.
Nice. Well, before we let you go, thank you so much for your time. Had a great convo. Anything you want to say about the album coming out July 16th?
If you listen to it, I hope you enjoy it. And if you do, it probably has a lot more to do with the producers in the band than it does me. But pretty happy with it. We're going on the road next month. We're going to be doing the Southeast in July 2021. So check out the show dates.
Yeah, if you come to Colorado anytime soon, let us know, man.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Do you have a favorite song from the new album?
My favorite one to play with the band is Old Dance Floor. I really enjoy that one. It's a little more electrified, a little livelier,
Oh, nice.
Bit of a
Great,
boot
man.
stomper.
All right, John. Thank you so much for your time. Hope you have a great weekend. And July 16th, Depreciated, the new album. Everybody go listen, go get it. We're going to share the hell out of it too when it comes out.
Hey, thank you guys so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yep, no problem, John.
Absolutely.
See ya.
Take it easy.
Cheers.